I'm here. Phew, that's a relief. Look, this is brought to you by Maton. And, I've had a long association with Maton guitars, going back to 1989, in fact. And anyway, we'll talk a bit more about that as we go. I'm going to play a little bit for you, and we'll do some chatting, answer some questions, yeah, have some fun. This is called Opposites Attract. always feel a bit better after I've played some guitar, and now we can get into some chatting, some questions. We'll go all interactive. It's kind of you've probably heard this from others too, it's kind of a strange experience sitting here just talking to my phone. Well, I guess we're all used to talking to phones, but you know, this is kind of a little different. And yeah, it's a weird feeling. And I've done one stream once before. It was for a Chinese group called Fingerstyle China. I've been over to China a couple of times now to tour, and there's a really fantastic acoustic guitar scene going on over there. There's a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of interest, and amazingly, a lot of Maton guitars floating around in China. It's incredible. And so I did a live stream for Fingerstyle China, and I felt really uncomfortable in the lead up to it. Just the thing of not having an audience, just being in my room, talking to no one essentially. But the amazing thing is once I hit that record button, or the go live button in this case, a little burst of adrenaline kicks in, and it's incredible. I can kind of put myself in a zone of, you know, I'm playing in front of an audience. So, well, I hope there's an audience there. There's more than one or two of you watching. But earlier today I got some questions sent through to me, so we might start on that, and we'll see how we go. I'm just going to have a quick look over at the screen here. It looks like there I am with latency. I'm just having a look if I can see any questions or comments coming in, and I can't, so I'm not really sure what I need to do to fix that. But anyway, I'm not going to worry about that. It's very distracting for you if I'm constantly looking over here. So I'll get to the questions that were sent through to me. And first one's an easy one. What stage gear do you use? Look, I'm a real keep it simple kind of person. I don't have a road crew when I'm traveling, so usually when I'm doing my solo concerts, it's just me. So the weight and the amount of gear that I carry is a major consideration. Now, basically, what I'm presenting today in this stream is exactly my live rig. It's this guitar, which you probably could never guess that it's a Michael Fix Maton, and it's going into an AER amplifier, and I've got that sitting down here behind me. I'm using a wireless system. I'm using this Line 6 wireless device, the G10. Got that the right way around? Yeah, the Relay G10. It's a fabulous unit. It the freedom that I have with it is fantastic as a performance tool to be able to move around, to be able to go out into the audience. Just the freedom of it is brilliant. I love it too when I'm doing workshops. I'm generally in a group, maybe with a circle of people, and I can be amplified, and I can be walking around the group, and everyone can hear what's going on. It's great. So anyway, that's going into my little effects board, and really it's very small. All I have in here that I'm using is another Line 6 device. It's called an M9. It's a multi effects pedal, and it's been, I guess it was designed originally as an electric guitar multi-effect unit, so it's got like hundreds and hundreds of all the classic distortions and delays and pitch changes and, you know, auto wire, anything you'd want for electric guitar. But I'm using it excuse me, I'm using it basically just for echo and some reverb, a couple of special effects which I suppose I could go into. I'm hoping you can, what you're hearing here is an amplified and an acoustic sound. So I'm sitting in front of a microphone so that you can hear my voice, and you're hearing the guitar acoustically as well as some of the ambient sound from the amplification. So I've got a couple of sort of special effects things that I use, like and this echo that I've found a couple of uses for this. It's a very obvious echo. You can hear my voice coming through the microphone. I would use it for, there's a particular piece. So I'm playing along with the echo. So you can hear it's quite a strong echo. I'll just turn the mic off because I'm hearing my voice echoing through the guitar now. And but if I'm playing exactly in time with it, and if I play exactly in time with it, it's almost like you don't actually hear that it's an echo. It creates like a harmony, and that tune. It's called Echoes from the Past. I wrote that tune. Oh, gee, this is going back to about 1994, 95, and I've always had some kind of delay unit in my rack, and I've always had that specific tempo for that specific song. But I also found I could use it for another tune, totally different. Like, so that was a ballad playing exactly in time, but this is something really up tempo. So here's that echo again. And I found I can get this in tempo. If I'm playing exactly in time, you don't hear that there's an echo. If I go a little bit out of time, it starts to turn into a mess. So it's a great way to practice. It helps, keep you in time. So I love messing around with some effects, especially for a concert situation. I think anything that you can throw into the mix that adds a color to a performance has got to be a good thing. And hey, why should electric guitar players have all the fun? We acoustic players, we've got these fantastic pickup systems. We can plug them into amps. We can do all sorts of stuff with it, and I love experimenting around with that. There's another effect that I use from time to time. And I say time to time, these are effects, so I'm a believer in you don't overdo it. It's like a spice in cooking. It's really nice to have a little bit of chili or a little bit of curry or whatever the spice is that you happen to like. But if you overdo it, put too much in, it kind of, it dilutes or changes everything. So I tend to only use like what I call special effects, like that sort of very strong echo, or this next one, which is a kind of creates a sort of a pad sound with the guitar. It's almost like strings or a choir or something coming up in the background. Now I can combine that with an echo, so I'm going to put an echo into it and get all, you know, soundscape kind of ideas happening. Turn it off, it'll fade away. So I'm getting a little carried away there, sorry about that. But that's yeah, that's basically my my very simple rig rundown guitar into the M9. Actually, I neglected to mention I have an octave pedal here that I use from time to time, and it just drops the bass strings down. I don't know how well you'll be able to hear this. If you're listening on computer speakers, you probably won't hear the effect of this at all. But there's a sub, like a 1 octave lower note being added. It's a Boss Super Octave pedal, an OC, what is it, OC3 it's called. And yeah, I like using that also, something like gets like almost like a double bass kind of sound going with it, and if that's through a PA system, especially if a system has subs, it's really, you know, really fills out the bottom end, and I love that. So that's it: guitar, M9, occasional octave pedal into the AER, and that's it. The AER that I've got a few AER amps. I've got a Compact 60, which was the first one that I had, that I bought, and I've got 2 Alphas, and the Alpha is the one I like to travel with, because I can fit my amp and my little effects pedal board, and some clothes and a bunch of CDs and everything into one medium-sized suitcase. So it's always been an important consideration for me traveling alone, is to be able to, you know, be able to carry all your luggage, especially touring through foreign countries. You want to have your hands on your luggage. Anyway, and when I'm traveling in Australia, I'll take a few extra. I brought some of the family along, as you can see. I travel with this 12 string. That's a Maton Mini Mahogany 12, and it's my sort of traveling 12-string guitar, but next to it is this fella. That's the it's a 225 12-string that I got many years ago, and that's the one I'll record with, and I love that guitar, and it feels fantastic to play. And I suppose I should play it, shouldn't I? Instead of talking about it, much more fun to hear it. So give you a little listen to both of these. So here's the Mini. People always get a lovely surprise because it looks like such a little, almost like a toy guitar. It's so small, but when I plug this into the PA, it's got such a big full sound. And again, I was talking before about the use of effects as like colors. It's the same for me with playing 12-string on a few songs. It's just another color, but if I played it too much, it'd probably be, it's too rich a spice. I'm going to play for you. So this one's strung up with 12s, so it's pretty tight. Being a shorter scale neck, it can handle heavier strings, but actually just a little bit too tough for me. I use this as a warm-up guitar as well, because it really gets the hands, gets them working hard. What would be perfect on this in 12-string set are 11s, but I'm not sure. I've looked around, I can't find 11s in a 12-string, so these are 12s. But the other one is strung with 10s, and it feels quite a lot softer to play. I just realised that I haven't even got past the first question yet, and there's a heap more to go. But I wanted you to hear some of these other instruments too, and I love this guitar. And a 12-string guitar is not a sound that you hear that much anymore, but I love it. There's something very evocative. It's something going back to my early years, and I think I can tell you exactly what it was. One of the very first records that I ever bought with my own money was an album by Glenn Campbell. It was before he was famous as a singer, and the album was called The Astounding 12-String Guitar of Glenn Campbell. And I actually have it sitting up there and on the wall as a constant reminder. And I had no idea what 12-string. I just saw the words astounding and guitar, and that's enough for me. I'm going to invest my money, my whatever it was back then, 75 cents or whatever an album cost came out, and that the sound of the guitar in that album kind of just stuck with me, and it's I think about that Glenn Campbell album every time I pick up the 12-string, and I really enjoy the sound. I love playing it. Thing is, of course, with a 12-string, they have to be set up really nice. You got to have the right gauge of string, and this one just works, and I've never had to do anything to this guitar. It's just the action, and the string gauge, the 10s work, and I love it. Let's move on. Let me have a quick look that everything seems to be okay there. I can't see any comments here. Look, I struggle with Facebook. I have to be really honest with you. That technology is a bit of a mystery to me. put me in front of Pro Tools in a studio, I'm all over it. But Facebook, I find really not intuitive. So I've got me, I can see myself, I can see what you're seeing, but I can't see comments or questions. So I'm sorry about that. But I do have some more questions here in front of me. Why did you start playing Maton guitars? Yeah, good question. Look, there was in the 80s, I'd moved up to Sydney, and I wanted to be a session player. That was kind of my ambition. I wanted to be a session guy, and I started playing sessions, and I was hanging out with Tommy Emmanuel a lot at that time, and he was living and working in Sydney, and Tommy was like the busiest guy around. He was doing everything. And I was kind of hanging around, and Tommy would be introducing me to producers and get to know the musicians. And eventually, you know, time came, he was double booked or he couldn't do a gig or whatever. And the producer gave me a turn, but it was always on acoustic, probably because, I don't know, maybe Tommy was doing a lot of acoustic sessions in those days. So I didn't have a lot of money at that time, so I basically had an acoustic stage guitar, which was a kind of a sort of a solid body style of acoustic electric guitar. And I had quite a nice, I think it was a Yamaha acoustic guitar, but it was like a real top end guitar. And I had this, you know, being on the budget at the time, I was thinking, gee, it would be great to have one guitar that did both jobs, that sounded great on stage, but it also sounded great as an acoustic instrument in the studio. And it turned out that I met Neville Kitchen, who was travelling at the time, showing off this particular guitar. This was a new model. This one was made in 1989, and I think I was in Brisbane, a bit hazy on the memory now. Tommy was there. He introduced me to Neville. I played this guitar, Tommy played the guitar, and Tommy said to Neville, Michael should have that guitar. And I'm just going, yeah, I agree with that. And anyway, so this was it. This was the first guitar that I got from Maton, and I started doing some workshops for Maton. I suppose it was sort of a unofficial endorsee at that time, but so I got this guitar about 1990, and that really kick-started things. It was the first really great sounding guitar that it worked in the studio, and still got the old pickup system. It used to have the 3 sliders on here, and then it got updated to this system it was made by a company called Wayne, and still sounds pretty damn good too. I don't really use it plugged in anymore, but I record a real lot with this guitar. And I saw a question earlier from Christos. He saw my ill-fated sound check when the screen was tilted on its side, commenting, you know, what timbers are these? He loved the sound of it. And to be honest, I couldn't tell you what this is made of. I'm just not that cluey. I can tell you what my model is, what the timbers are, but the others that are around me, I really have no idea. Now, I'm looking around for my thumb pick, which I'm probably sitting on. I'll put down somewhere. Doesn't matter. I've got a bag full of them here. So this guitar, I've got this now. I've got 13s on here, and I've tuned it down a half step. So it's down to, if I play that chord, E, it's actually sounding E flat, and it just sounds kind of a bit darker. And everything okay? Oh, good. Oh, okay. My wife has just come in with some comments. Her comment is, when are you going to get out of the studio? No, that's not what she said. She's dropped an iPad in because she must have been watching, which is very nice. Ah, okay, cool. Okay, I'm going to have a look at those in a sec. So this is a half a step lower. It just sounds kind of, I don't quite know the word to describe it. It's a deeper sound, and I use this. I record with this guitar a lot, and I use this for MacArthur Park. And it just sounds a bit more meaty or something. But this was the guitar that sort of started it for me, and I've had it since 1990. I love it. I really this guitar floats my boat. I use it so much for recording, but not so much live, because the new pickup systems do it, and the Dreadnought size. I get a little bit of a sore shoulder after a while, so it's one of the reasons I tend to go for the smaller body guitars. I'm just going to put our old mate back. So let's have a look. Put the old goggles on and see what we've got. Elwyn Jordan, yeah, from down Wollongong, my hometown, who also has the Glenn Campbell album, and there's a beautiful thing on the back of that album that I love. You know, in those days, when you flipped over to the back of the album, there would be some sort of editorial. Someone from a radio station or a record company or some other artist has written it's almost like a dedication or something you see in the beginning of a book, the foreword. Be a bit of a description, and this on the back of the album that I have, there's a comment from a radio guy, ran some radio show, and it says something like, and in my considered opinion, Glenn Campbell whilst he's a very fine guitar player, he has a lovely tenor singing voice, and I think he might have some future as a vocalist, or words to that effect. Well, I'll talk about an understatement. Joe Murray from Boston. Hi, great to see that you're tuned in too. Yeah, thanks for your comments. Line 6 M9 Boss OC3. Yep, that's the one. Yeah, and you like my family? Thank you, Sheila Ray. That's great. I'm in. Great to see you here too. The Balcony Bunch. Cool. Well, I can keep an eye on that now, and see if any other comments come in. Let's have a look at the next question. What's the best way to make progress with fingerpicking? Yeah. Look, that's a great one. I always recommend getting a teacher for anything. Doesn't matter, fingerpicking, whatever your bag is, whatever your instrument is. Find a teacher. Find someone you admire, who's going to motivate you, because these days we learn so much from YouTube, but it's not the same because there's no commitment. There's no, if you're trying to do YouTube lessons or something, it's very easy to say, I'm not in the mood today, and you put something off. But if you've got a teacher that you're seeing on a regular basis and say, well, by next Wednesday, I'm going to be sitting in front of this person, and you don't want to look like a fool, so you're working a little harder on the skills or the tasks that you've been set. Now, aside from that, a good teacher would probably tell you it's always slow. Start very, very slow and focus on the groove as much as anything else. So practice with a metronome. If you can do something really slow and precisely and keep it in tempo, and you're developing your internal groove as well, and that's such an important thing, and it's just something that so often is missing. I see so many really technically great players, but not all of them have a groove, and it's not something that happens overnight. It's something you have to be aware of, and something that you can develop. And I still go back to basics if I'm getting ready. If I'm getting ready for a gig, for example, my if I do some warm-ups in the dressing room, I'll focus on the simplest thing. I'll just want to get a groove going, and it'll be, I'll play one of my favorite chords, which is an A minor. And I'll just play this kind of... Now when I do that, I can feel my whole body is engaging with that. So it's not just about coordination and fingers. I'm keeping that super simple, but I can't play without my foot tapping. My body starts to get involved, and when I feel like I'm starting to get inside the song, inside the groove, that's the happy place I want to get to. And it's something that no one ever really tells you or teaches you, but I think it's so I'm telling you now for free. So it's something to be aware of and something to focus on, and I think awareness is a big part of the battle. As I say, a lot of people don't even think about it. I think it's human nature, especially when we're younger. We just want to get there fast. We want to play fast. I made that mistake, and probably still do to this day when I'm learning stuff. I skip over things. I get a little lazy. I can see the goal, and I got to get there. But first, there has to be this concentrated time of just really working it slowly and and really in the pocket, and then start to lift the tempo, and then start to add things to it. A fancy run or whatever it is. But that's my opinion anyway about how to progress with, I guess, not just finger picking, whatever. If you're playing bluegrass or you're playing heavy metal or whatever, no one just launches into it at full speed. Everyone has got a backstory where they worked up to and developed their technique, but from very slow. Okay, I hope you're enjoying this. I'm having a good time. Hey Dale, I found a great teacher. I'm watching him on my phone right now. Hey, you should be concentrating on this. Good on you, Dale. Hi, Carl. Now, these are lovely to see your names popping up here. These Dale and Carl, a couple that we met at one of the guitar camps, the Tommy Emmanuel guitar camp. I was a tutor there. The one in Melbourne is where we met. We had a fantastic time. Wasn't that a great weekend? Good fun. I'm doing my own guitar camps too, and so I started doing them in Europe last year, and this year, of course, all gone. I had one in Austria, I had one in Norway, but postponed till next year. But I'm doing one in Wollongong, my hometown. So it's that's right at the end of October, 31st October, 1st of November. And I'm planning to do one in Melbourne, do one in Brisbane as well. So it's something I'd like to see it grow. And there'll be smaller groups, probably limited to no more than 15 people. But yeah, keep that in mind. Be great if we could connect like that. Carl, play us any of your original songs. Actually, play for us. I've played you some originals. Play for us your first, then your most recent originals. My first, gee. That's a... I started playing 50 years ago, and I started kind of making up tunes. I wouldn't say... I wouldn't want to use the word compose, to applying to me at age 11 or 12, but I do remember coming up with a tune that went something like, and then I think I did a key change. I went, I suppose it wasn't that bad if I can remember it 50 years later. I can't believe you asked me that, and that I remembered that. Most recent, I've been writing a lot of new tunes just in this past 6 weeks or so, and the most recent one is let's see if it's not none of them are really embedded yet. So I'm doing, as I mentioned before, every day I'm just playing slowly going through them, just building up, the hand positions, working out the motor skills. So one of the tunes, very recent one, is this. It's like a blues. So there you go, Carl. That's a brand new tune. That one. It's a working title: Isolation Blues, or Blues for John. It's dedicated to a friend of mine who died quite recently, and I was in the middle of. I just started putting that tune together when I learnt about his passing, and somehow it's become attached to him now. Here we go. There's a message from Maryland, USA. Frank, hello Frank. What level of Maton model is best for perfect intonation up and down the neck? Well, I don't know how to answer that. I've got quite a lot of Matons, and they all have great intonation. And this guitar back here, that's a 12-string guitar, a 225, which is like the bass model. The intonation is perfect. Absolutely no complaint about that. I don't think there's a particular model that is any more perfect than any other model when it comes to intonation, because the necks are pretty much all identical, and they're done with computerized CNC machines, so the measurements are just so perfect. It's one of the things I love about these guitars. They're so great for traveling. I can go from, say, as I typically do, leave Australia when it's middle of winter here, turn up in, say, Italy, in the Mediterranean, and it's middle of summer, and it gets bloody hot over there, as it does in Australia. Mm-hmm. With the guitar, of course, it's a bit of a freak out for a wooden instrument, but the Maton's really stable. I carry a truss rod key with me when I'm touring, and I'm always tweaking it just a little because I have the action set very low, so any temperature variation just causes a little shifting in the action. So I just do a little tweak on it. If it gets a bit too low and buzzy, I can just let the neck go a little bit, lifts the action. But the intonation always stays the same. Yeah. All right, let's have a look at some of these other questions. What's your favorite tuning? That was sent to me earlier today. My favorite tuning is standard tuning. I do admire people who can play in lots of different tunings. For me, it's like this lifelong work to just get my head around standard tuning. I'll drop the E string down to D. My brain can cope with that. That's quite a small change. I like that. I like that extra. I like the fact that I can be. It's like the neck has extended a little. I can be playing up here, F sharp and low D, and so I'm playing in the key of D. Just snuck that in because I did see on the comments somebody asked about fever, but that's a typical example where I'll get the drop D happening, and it's just given it's another color to the guitar. It's given it another dimension. I would very occasionally experiment with the A string down to G, but you know, for most part, I'm in standard or E string down to D. So I guess standard is my favorite tuning. Another one that was sent in: what piece of advice that has heavily influenced your career? Yeah, that's a good question, and a pretty easy one to answer. I mentioned earlier that in the 80s I moved up to Sydney from my hometown of Wollongong, with the aim of becoming a session player, and I teamed up with Tommy Emmanuel, and he became like a mentor. He's like an older brother for me. Tommy's about 3 years older than I am, and at that stage of my life, when I was about 18, he was like the coolest older brother that anyone could have. He kind of took me under his wing, and he showed me endless stuff on guitar, and we listened to music together and watched TV together and hang out, and I'd drive him around to recording studios and all that kind of stuff. It was fabulous, and I started to. He introduced me to the music of Chet Atkins, and that has become like the foundation of what I do these days. It was like the light bulb moment when I heard Chet Atkins play, and then had Tommy, like real life YouTube, sitting in, you know, it's when you see something is possible, it has such a profound impact. And he played me some Chet Atkins, and it dawned on me, if I could do that, if I can play bass with my thumb, and I could play rhythm and melody with my fingers, I could be a solo guitarist. I wouldn't need a band, and you know, I could travel around. I sort of had this fantasy image in my mind of me traveling the world with a guitar in one hand and my wife by my side. But you know, being able to travel the world in that way. Well, it took quite a while to get to that point, but I did, and I am living that dream, and I really can't thank Tommy enough for that. But anyway, getting back to the advice, when I started to whenever you get inspired by something or someone, you copy. You're copying. You're stealing ideas. You're absorbing everything, and naturally, the way it comes out is as a sort of a pastiche of somebody else. And what he said to me, and these days it sounds like a bit of a cliche, but to me as an 18 or 19-year-old, it was so profound coming from somebody who was not that much older than me either. He said, "You have to be the best you that you can be," and that kind of that message just went bang, straight to the heart, and I sort of made it a bit of a mission from that point on to kind of try to find my own voice, use the influences, but not necessarily copy or play the repertoire of my idols. And at that time, for example, Tommy was started playing his solo gigs, and there were not many solo acoustic guitar players around in Sydney who were performing as soloists, and he really picked the eyes out of the guitar repertoire. Every incredible, famous guitar instrumental he had in his set. So I knew there's no point in me playing any of the tunes that he's playing. Somebody's already doing that, and it's doing it unbelievably well, better than I'll ever be able to. So I've got to find my thing and my style. So I started to look for a repertoire that would represent me. And at the time, I hadn't written that many pieces, so I was looking for arrangements, looking for things that I could do that were different. And I delved into the classical repertoire, and I've been playing with a band called Hat Trick in Sydney in the 80s, and we played a lot of classical, like rocked up classical music. Audiences loved it. And so I knew that these pieces worked, so I'd started working out things. Pieces like that, and I put quite a few sort of classical arrangements into my set, and it became a bit of a point of difference as I was gaining a little confidence as a solo, as a composer as well, and started to bring original pieces into my set. So that piece of advice was a real turning point for me. So thank you for that question. Let's see what we got here. Hello, Scott. Yeah, nice to meet you up at Toowoomba. I think we need to do another masterclass up there. That was great fun. Cool. I'm just going back through some of the comments because I've been chatting so much. I haven't been reading your comments. That's Shane. You were the one who requested Fever, so yeah, thank you. Thank you, Carl. I'm glad you like the Isolation Blues. From Darren, hi, Michael. What do you do to take care of your matons? I have new Blackwood that I would like to take care of. I play them. I play them to death. I'm not sure what you mean by take care of them. Do you mean cleaning or... I don't do anything. I have to be really honest with you. I don't do any, I don't know, oils or cleaning solutions or anything like that. Occasionally, if I've got a guitar that I haven't played for a while, it's sitting around, it's got a bit of dust on it, I get a paintbrush, get rid of the dust under the strings. Today with this one, I changed the strings on it, and the frets were looking a little marked, so I just got some steel wool and put it on just a little chunk of wood, and I just rubbed the steel wool up up and down the neck. The frets came up all shiny. Took about 3 minutes. That's about it. I really yeah. Sorry if I disappointed you with that one, but that's yeah. I just play them. There was actually something someone just mentioned here about the about fingernails, and I must point out I don't use fingernails on my right hand. I don't have nails, and I have calluses. If I'm playing a lot, if I'm on tour, those calluses, they get really firm, just like on your left hand, and I've worked pretty hard to, you with a thumb pick, that's a really thick bit of plastic. It's going to make a lot of volume. It's going to create a lot of noise, and you want your fingers to be able to match that if need be. So if I'm playing a lot, I play quite firmly with my fingers. Typically in a concert, I'm playing very lightly, but as a sort of to get the fingers warmed up and get the calluses firm, I'll play quite hard. So an example is if I have a bit of a break say I go on holidays or something and I'm doing a bit of swimming and the skin gets all soft and flabby and my tone is gone. So what I need to do is I'll play really aggressively for really pulling on the strings till it hurts. And I'll make sure I'm using all three fingers, and occasionally I'll use the fourth as well. And in a very short time, those calluses toughen up, and the tone comes back. And it's the sound that I'm looking for with an acoustic steel string guitar. For me, the sound of a nail, my nail, I should say, is a bit thin. I'm hearing a tone in my head which is halfway between a nylon string guitar and a steel string guitar. So it has the roundness, and that's what the fingertips give me. But as I say, I've worked on getting the volume and tone pretty even across the fingers and matching it up to the sound I'm getting out of a thumb pick as well. And the further question about the warm-ups or stretches or whatever before I play. I mentioned earlier on about if I'm preparing for a concert, very simple grooves. I'm just wanting to feel good. It's a mental game. I'm wanting to psych myself up, psychologically get into the right zone to perform, and to do that I need to be relaxed. And the way I relax myself and make myself feel good is not to play anything complex or fast or rush, because that's just asking for trouble, and I've gone down that road way too many times and caused myself way too much stress and anxiety. So I'll just play simple grooves, get myself loose and free, tell myself how good it feels, flood my brain with positive messages. Really is what it's all about. If I want to do some sort of stretchy things, there are pieces that I play where I do need to have a bit of a stretch, and I don't have large hands, I don't have long fingers, so I'll do things like these. And I'll work on just getting it really clean, doing some stretchy chords, like an F major 7 up there. I have a few different exercises that I run through that are more for just coordination. But yeah, it always comes back to just playing stuff. If I rather than doing a particular exercise, I'll play particular tunes. Now I was going to turn the page here. There's a couple of interesting questions that were sent through. How has your music changed over time? Sorry, there are no names attached to these particular questions. I think they came off Instagram this morning. How has your music changed over time? Whew, I've been thinking about that one. And I'm not sure how to answer it. I'd love to think that my music, when you say your music, I'm presuming you're referring to my compositions, the stuff that I write, the way that I express myself. I think I'm probably going for, as I'm getting older, going for the less is more approach. I'm thinking more melodically these days than I ever have before, and I'm trying to live by the mantra of melody is king. Melody and groove, they're the two aspects that turn me on in music. And no matter what style of music, actually, it doesn't really matter if it's jazz or blues or Latin or pop or whatever. I love a great melody and I love a great groove, and I love to write melodies. And I think over the years, I'm probably focusing on that more, just fine-tuning that aspect of composition. And composing is like anything. The more you do it, the more you practice it, the better you get at it. You have long periods where nothing seems to work, and then you have a few breakthroughs and an aha moment, and and it's part of the journey, and it's exciting. And I'd never know when the next tune is going to appear, when it's going to pop out, and under what circumstances. But I kind of live for those moments. I think it's probably my favorite thing is when a tune pops out, and I got my iPhone there ready to record the initial burst that comes out, and then after that, that's the fun and the easy part. Then it's like fine tuning, arranging, harmony, all those aspects. And I think I'm getting better at that stuff. So that's how I would answer that question. Yeah, I haven't even noticed. Geez, I've been going for over an hour. I thought I'd be done in 30 minutes, but thank you so much for all your comments and questions. Lloyd asks, what are your thoughts on string gauges? Can you get a nice tone from lighter or hybrid gauges? Yeah, look, I think, on acoustic guitars, I tend to go for heavier gauge string because I like the sustain they bring. But there's a comfort factor that comes into play. I think it comes down to your personal touch. The sound you're getting out of the guitar is more to do with your touch, what you're striking the guitar with and how, rather than factors like the string gauge. If you put a set of 9s on an acoustic guitar, it's going to be hard to get a fat sound out of it. Apart from anything else, it's going to buzz like crazy because there's a lot less tension on the neck. The strings are going to drop. So, if you're going to do massive string changes, gauges, that is, you also have to take into account the guitar might need just be set up a little bit differently to get the maximum benefit out of it. So if you had lighter gauge strings on an acoustic, you'd want the action raised a little, unless you play like really delicately and you're using amplification. There's so many different ways of approaching it. And the strings are one factor, but on the acoustic, I've stuck to 12s on my main stage guitars. Occasionally I go to 13s, but it'll be often just for recordings. But on stage I go back to the 12s, and I'm used to them. They're comfortable. Yeah, so I just go with that. So there was another question here. What artists have you been most inspired by? And I thought long and hard about that one too, because there isn't a single artist. There are so many artists who've inspired me. I can summarize it by saying pretty much anybody, any artist who's got their own sound or their own personality and brings that personality out through their music, through their voice, through their instrument. I love those kind of artists. But the ones that have been really important for me, I mentioned Tommy Emmanuel, not just for what he did for me in the early days and the stuff he showed me, and the level of the possibilities that he presented to me. It was also, he introduced me to a lot of guitar players, the music of many players that I really wasn't familiar with. And we're talking about players like George Benson, Barney Kessel, Joe Pass, Lenny Breau, Django Reinhardt, Jerry Reed, Earl Klugh, the list goes on. And they were all players that excited me, that I got a lot of stuff from, and I still enjoy listening to today. Chet Atkins was really a big one. That was the kind of the flame. Tommy lit that particular flame for me, and I just loved Chet's inventiveness and his tone and his arrangement ideas, and yeah, just I'm still to this day, if I'm feeling uninspired, this might be a good way to answer your question. If I'm feeling uninspired, what do? I listen to Beatles. I always get a kick out of. I always hear something new. In addition to the nostalgia thing, that where it takes me, I listen to Chet, and sometimes I'll relearn something that I learned when I was in my teen years or in my 20s that I know I never learned it properly because I was rushing and I was skipping details and I was too eager to race ahead. And I'll relearn it and try and do it properly, and I get a real buzz out of that. So I guess from that point of view, people like Beatles, Chet Atkins. I love songwriters. I love the music of. I love anything Neil Finn does. Mark Knopfler. I'm a huge Knopfler fan, and I love his songwriting. I love his lyrics, his approach to guitar playing. So they're the big ones for me. And gee, we must be getting to the end here. I feel like I'm taking up a lot of your time here, and still questions to answer. There's one from Jen that I saw, which is I'll see if I can get through these. These are big questions, but I'm going to have to do a very quick summary on these. I'm intrigued. Jen writes, "Hi Michael, I'm intrigued how players of your level see or intrinsically feel the fretboard, especially while improvising. What was your process over this over the years? For me, it's shapes, blah blah blah." So how I see the fingerboard when improvising. To summarize it quite briefly, when I first started playing, it was all about chords. Chords were the first thing I learned, and I loved the fact that I could look at sheet music and had little chord diagrams on it, and those little dots on the diagrams I could just visualize as a grid, that my fingers go where the dots go. And I figured out very quickly how to play inversions. So I learnt triads for like a C chord, and I found finding all those little shapes quite easy, because I was relating it to the little blocks that I saw, and I would draw them out myself. I'd try and find all the places I could play a C chord. I had a great guitar teacher, a guy called Alan Phillips, when I was a teenager, and he taught me some music theory, and he taught me about triads, which are the building blocks of chords, 3-note chords, and I started to get this idea: you don't have to strum all 6 strings to play a chord. 3 notes is all that's required. So when I started to learn about improvising, my first point of reference were those triads. And I would try, if I was playing C, G7, so just say I'm looping over C and G7, I'd play, and I'm just playing shapes, the chord shapes, and then so I'm just picking notes out of the chords, and then I'd move them up to the next position. So I'm working around that. G7, it's part of the C. And then after a while I got a bit bored with it, and I'd start to think of how can I connect. I want to move from here up to here, and I'd be watching other guitar players, and I thought, that's really cool how they're kind of climbing up the neck. What are they doing there? And I just figure out ways of linking from there, from that C up to that one. So I'd put in little chromatic runs, or that's just on the B string. So I might try it. So I've done a climb up on the G string, or from the D string. Now in my mind, it doesn't look like it from your point of view, but in my mind I'm seeing that shape, and I'm seeing that shape, and I'm seeing that shape. They're just little triads. It's a very short answer to a question that I could talk about for years. And I think we must be coming up to the final bits, the final question. Do I ever use a looper? Yes, I do. Going back to that idea of sprinkling some colours into a performance. I might use a looper on one song, and it'll be a little. I don't know, it'll be like a almost like, I don't like to use the word novelty. It's like a novelty, a trick, and I'll tell the audience what's going on too, because I've seen people using loopers who are like fantastic at it, and the audience has no idea what's going on, and I've overheard people say, "Oh, he's cheating," or "That's a backing track," or people can get turned off by the idea if they think they're being fooled. So I'll use it in a way that I have a bit of humor with it, and I'll explain to people, look, I just recorded myself and I'm playing over the top, and I'll have a bit of fun with it. But it's usually just one song in a performance. So that's the looper, and I've got low battery warning here. So which one? It's the M9 looper, which doesn't go for very long. I think it's 22 seconds or something, but it's okay for what I use it for. Had a final question from Jerry, which was, how do I go about creating an acoustic guitar arrangement? Wow, that's a whole course right there in arranging. And I'll try and give a very unsatisfactory, no doubt, but brief summary of the process. It's my knowledge of chords, my knowledge of harmony. I mentioned that I do know some music theory, so I had a teacher who took me through all the scales and all the keys, and I know how to use chord substitutions. But even before I get to that point, which is getting into the technical stuff, I think about an arrangement. Why do I want to arrange a particular piece of music? There's got to be some driving force, and usually the number one thing is, I love this song. I want to arrange it for guitar because it's going to bring me pleasure, and I have a connection to it in some way. Then the next step might be, what do I want to do with the arrangement? Do I want to keep it really authentic and original? Or do I want to go a little bit outside the box and present something that might be familiar but in a fresh new way? So, and those decisions, they vary from song to song. If I'm doing a Beatles song, I'll usually keep it pretty close to the original. There's enough great stuff going on in a Beatles song. A great melody, a great bass line, interesting chords. I don't often feel a need to muck around with that too much. Other things, I'll give you a very quick example. When I'm touring in Europe, the audiences over there, they love Waltzing Matilda. And of course, everyone plays Waltzing Matilda. I can play the very simple way. Right, the traditional chords. So I thought, well, I'd like to do something a little different with it, and I went to the lyric, and the story to me is a pretty tragic story, and I thought, it's such a happy, it sounds too happy. I'm going to make it a kind of a more of the tragic side of it, and so I put it into a minor key, and so this is now the arranger brain kicking in, going, let's change these chords. Let's keep the melody the same, but we're going to change the chords, and we're going to give a whole different emphasis to the song. It's going to be much darker. So I've created a little counter melody there against the tune. That's quite a dark, brooding sort of sound. A minor chord. and then I arranged a section where I'm thinking like a piano player. On the piano, if you have adjacent white notes, they're really easy to play on a piano. But on a guitar, they're really hard to play, as they have these stretchy chords. So it's a very, very familiar song, but harmonized in a different way, and that probably goes in no way towards answering your question, Jerry. But next time we catch up, we can go into more detail. Look, I better round this thing up before the battery dies and everything switches off. And thank you very much for watching and tuning in. It's been great fun. Thanks for all your comments too. I've enjoyed reading them, and yeah, appreciate your interest. So thank you, Maton, for hosting this. And I didn't even get to play some of the other guitars. We'll have to do that in another one. I was gonna play some of the old vintage guitars. I've got an old classical lying here as well. I've got a master sound here. A couple of cool instruments. This one is serial number 2 of the carved top master sound. This baby here, that's a serial number 1. So I feel very, very honoured to have these instruments, and I love them dearly. And I know you're all Maton fans too, so you know how I feel. So thank you again, and we'll catch up again soon. Drop by my website, michaelfix.com, jump on the mailing list. I do newsletters when I got guitar camps or concerts, or anything new. Always got new videos coming out on my YouTube channel as well. I've got lots of downloads, tabs, all that kind of stuff. You know the drill. Anyway, catch you again. Bye.